Right, okay. Welcome to the second talk of today. And it's a pleasure to introduce Supriya Pisolkar, also from my side, Pune. And she would be talking about Fontaine Mazur Conjecture and analytic trophy groups.
Yeah. So, first of all, I would like to thank all organizers for their efforts to bring all of us together here. And thanks for giving me this opportunity. Uh, okay, I don't know whether you can clearly hear me. Actually, I came to my office so that I will have a better connectivity. But we have a major construction going on in our main building, and right now there is a lot of noise of that construction. So I really have to apologize to you if there is any disruption. Okay. Um, Let me begin. So in general, when we study Galois group, as we all know, one of the hard question is for a number field K, what is the absolute Galois group of K? Okay. To be precise, can we write down the structure of this group? Okay. So there are two ways to approach this. One is direct method, which is study of elements and maybe other constituents via group theory. There is another method, which is indirect method, where we study the action of this group on the well-chosen vector space via representation theory. Okay. It is believed that one of the most mysterious objects in this context are Galois groups of infinite P extensions, which are unramified at the prime above P. Okay, so here I'm fixing a prime P, and we are talking about infinite P extensions, which are unramified at the primes above P. Okay, so maybe I will also hint upon in next coming slides why this is the case. Okay, why these are the one of the most mysterious objects. Okay. So in this talk, we are going to restrict mostly to these type of extensions. Okay, and what we are going to maybe I will what I will briefly talk about is how these extensions are studied with the help of group-theoretic techniques. Okay, so these group-theoretic techniques are less known among modern arithmetic geometers, and I will also give glimpse of how these techniques have contributed in providing evidence for analogs of Fontaine-Mazur conjecture. Okay, so I will this is actually work done jointly with Ramla Abdellatif, Jacqueline Lang, Marin Ronot, and Lara Thomas. So all these are in various universities of France, and we started this work in Women in Numbers Europe episode project. And our goal was to actually look at various aspects of Fontaine-Mazur conjecture and try to see how especially these group theoretic techniques have played a role in giving evidence to various analogs of Fontaine-Mazur conjecture. So let me start. So I will just mention here the original Fontaine-Mazur conjecture. Although we will not work with this, we will work with the analogs of this conjecture. So let K be a number field and Jk be the absolute Galois group of K. Let's fix the prime number P. So we define periodic representation rho of Gk as geometric if it ramifies only at a finite number of places of K, and if for each place V of K dividing P, the restriction of rho to Gv, the decomposition group, is potentially semi-stable in the sense of Fontaine. Okay, so please excuse me, I'm not going to discuss the definition of potentially semi-stable here. But don't worry, we will hardly use this definition. So now, a remarkable conjecture of Fontaine-Mazur says that an irreducible periodic representation of Gk is geometric in this sense, in the above sense, if and only if it is isomorphic to a subquotient of an ethyl cohomology group with coefficients in some take twist, let's say QPR, of a projective smooth algebraic variety. Okay, so Fontaine-Mazur conjecture says that periodic representation, irreducible periodic representation is geometric if and only if it actually comes from algebraic geometry. Okay. So in Fontaine's original paper where he has discussed this conjecture, he has also specified that the representations which are coming from algebraic geometry, they already are geometric. So they are already potentially semisable at the primes dividing P, and the next condition, the other condition is also satisfied. Okay. So the hardest part of this conjecture is to show that any geometric representation is actually coming from algebraic geometry. Okay. And this is one of the most influential conjectures in modern arithmetic geometry. So for this conjecture, let me tell you that the case n equal to 1 of this conjecture, okay, is so n equal to 1 in the sense where we are considering this representation rho of gk to gln qp. Okay, so n equal to 1 case of this conjecture is known by class-field theory. And the case n equal to 2 followed by the methods of whiles, Taylor whiles, inner, and whiles. Okay. So the case n equal to 2 is already has created a sub area of in arithmetic geometry. So various new techniques have been developed in these results by Wiles, Taylor Wiles, and Skinner and Wiles. Point is that although this conjecture is so important, actually there are some delicate things about this conjecture which are missing from the literature. Maybe they are known to the experts. Okay, so what we have done in our manuscript is to write down in detail all these missing links. For example, the case n equal to 1, why it followed by class-field theory. Okay, so it was really unfortunate that till now it wasn't actually explicitly written down in the literature. So I will also hint upon many other things, the other aspects of this conjecture which were missing from the literature and which we have incorporated in our manuscript. Okay.
And n equal to q, is that for k equal to q or general number field k?
Oh, sorry, it was k equal to q. Yeah, sorry, correct. So thanks for pointing out. So now this theory comes in two flavors. The while case where primes above P are in it. Okay, so let me go back one slide. Here we are saying that representation is geometric if it ramifies only at finite number of places. Okay, so I am denoting this set of finite number of places by S. Okay, now we have this fixed prime number P, and now we are saying that there are two cases where this P lands in S or whether P is outside of it. Okay, so this case is called as while case when P is in S, and the other case is called as same case when P is not in S. That is to say that the representation is ramified at P, unramified at P. Okay, so I will mainly talk about the second case, the tame case. Okay, so whatever preliminary evidence for this conjecture that is available, the main work is done in the while case. Okay, and very little is known about the tame case. So let me mention this conjecture. This is called as analog of Fontaine-Mazur conjecture, and this is named as tame Fontaine-Mazur conjecture. So if rho g k bar to k to gln qp is a periodic representation unramified at outside S, where S contains no primes above P and S is finite, then we are saying that image of rho is actually finite. So please pay attention here. We are saying that so if these conditions are satisfied, then in fact we are saying that rho cannot have an infinite image. And if you try to compare this statement with the original Fontaine-Mazur conjecture, then it's not obvious at all that how we are deducing this conclusion. Okay. So point is that so I will not. I mean, I myself haven't studied this in great detail, but what is known is that this prediction is because of theorem of Grothendieck. Okay. And also another some known results, known conjectures from algebraic geometry, which says that once we have S not containing P, and if S is a finite set, then the image of rho should be finite. Okay. So we will talk about mainly this, but again another version of this same Fontaine-Mazur conjecture. That if these conditions are satisfied, then rho gk bar over k to j ln qp cannot have infinite image. There is a result of Razard which says that a topological group has a structure of periodic analytic group if and only if, sorry, there is a typo, if and only if it contains an open uniform pro-P subgroup. Okay. So here when we are talking about GLN-QP and we are talking about image of this inside this, so GLN-QP is actually a periodic analytic Lie group, and we are talking about, we are looking at the image of this representation inside this. Okay. Lazard's result is telling us that when can a subgroup inside this is again a periodic analytic group. So it says that this has a structure of periodic analytic group if and only if it contains an open uniform pro-P subgroup. Okay. So these are very special type of pro-P subgroups. Okay. And in a minute, I'm going to discuss what these groups are. So I will define what uniform pro-P subgroups are. Okay. So one can actually now say that Fontaine-Mazur conjecture can be stated for, let's say, S equal to when S is an empty set. Okay, that is to say that when the representation is everywhere unramified, as follows: that there does not exist a number field and an infinite everywhere unramified Galois pro-P extension L, such that Galois group of L over K is uniform. Okay. So this is called as uniform version because now we are no more talking about the representation-theoretic statement, but we are just focusing on now this group-theoretic property. Okay. So, okay. So let me first define what are these uniform groups. So I will just quickly mention some facts about pro-P groups. So G is a profinite group. Then we define Fratini subgroup of a profinite group as the intersection over all maximal proper open subgroups. A pro-P group G is finitely generated if and only if its Fratini subgroup, which we denote always as PG, is open in G. The lower P series of pro-P group G is the series of special type of some subgroups of G, which are characteristic subgroups. So characteristic subgroups means they are invariant under all automorphisms of G. Okay, and let me define this filtration. So here P1G is G itself, and Pi plus 1 of G is the closure of this product of the group. Okay. So for any pro-P group G, we have P of G, the Fratini subgroup is actually equal to P2 of G, which is closure of GP product of GP, G to the power P, and commutator GG. Okay. So from here, you can actually see that if I look at the quotient G mod Phi G, then because Phi G contains powers of P powers in G, you can see that G mod Phi G is actually FP vector space. Okay. So for so for finitely generated P group, we define DG as the dimension of this FP vector space G mod Phi G. Interestingly, this number is also same as the cardinality of a topological generating space for G. And this also matches with the dimension of this periodic analytic group if at all such structure exists on the group. Okay, so this is a very important invariant of P group. Okay, so we will need some of these notions in our coming slides. So what is a uniform P group? A P group G is powerful when either P is odd and G by G to the power P is an abelian group, or when P is 2, then G by G to the power 4 is an abelian group. Okay. Although this definition is for P group, you can actually generalize this to any P group. Okay, where instead of GP, you will have to take the closure of G to the P, and similarly here you have to take the closure of G to the power 4. Okay, a uniform group G is powerful, finitely generated P group, such that for all I, the filtration that I had mentioned earlier, the index of Pi plus 1G in Pig is same as index of P2G in G. Okay, so this is definition of uniform group, and of course, rather than going through this cumbersome, remembering this definition, maybe it actually it will be good if we could have some examples in mind. So let's look at the map SLNZP to SLNZ mod PZ. Okay, then the kernel of this map, which we denote by SL1NZP, this is a uniform group of dimension n square minus 1. Okay, so this is a family of examples of uniform group. Okay. And we will again use this special type of group again. There are many other types of uniform groups, and there is sort of a classification of P group, finitely generated P group, which is already done. Now, as I had mentioned you earlier, that I'm going to talk about the uniform version of Fontaine Mazur conjecture. So the first evidence for this conjecture was given by Nigel Boston, and instead of using the automorphic techniques or the representation-theoretic techniques, he developed purely group-theoretic methods related to this powerful P group. So let me mention his result here. So let K be a normal extension of time degree L not equal to P of a number field X, such that P does not divide Hf, which is the class number of F. So I have a cyclic extension K over F, which is of degree L, and it is co-prime to P where P does not divide the class number of F. Then there is no infinite everywhere unramified Galois P extension L of K such that L is Galois over F, and further the Galois group L over K is uniform. Okay. So this is first evidence for Fontaine Mazur conjecture. Then our set S of ramified primes is actually empty. So we are talking about everywhere unramified Galois P extension. Okay. So Boston generalized his result to the case where K over F is actually cyclic extension of degree N, where N and P are co-prime. So here it was earlier it was K over F, it was of prime degree. Okay, then he generalized to any n where n and p are coprime. Okay, so the main ingredient of the proof of this method is the cyclic action of sigma on the Galois group of L over K. Where what is sigma? So we are talking about this T over F as a cyclic extension of degree L. Okay, so I'm fixing a generator sigma of this extension K over F. Okay, so sigma comes from there. I will quickly tell you the idea of the proof here, and you will see that how some simple group theoretic observations has given us such a strong result. So let me again mention that we have to show that if these conditions are satisfied, then there is no infinite everywhere Galois group extension whose Galois group is uniform. Okay, so on contrary, suppose that there exists extension L over K satisfying these properties whose Galois group is uniform, and we will arrive at a contradiction. So we are going to use Schuh-Zasanoff theorem here. So we have a short exact sequence. So L over K is our full Galois extension. We have this K over F, which is a cyclic extension sitting inside L, and now we have this Galois group of L over K. Point is that because this is a propy group, G L over K, it's a uniform group, so it's a propy group, and because K over F has cardinality L, okay, order L, which is coprime to P, we know that this splits. Okay, so there exists sigma in Galois L over K mapping onto generator of G K over F. Okay, so we have denoted a generator of this by sigma. Okay, now one can further derive by the condition that G L over K is now we have assumed to be uniform. From there, we can derive that sigma cannot act fixed point free on the quotient G mod P. So because we have a element here which is mapping onto the generator here, we know that sigma has action, sigma acts by conjugation on the image of L over K sitting inside G L over S. Okay. Now this G L over K is uniform. I'm looking at it inside this G L over S. And because this is uniform, I know that there is a filtration of these characteristics subgroup PI. So because PIs are characteristic subgroups, they are invariant under the action of sigma. And so this action factors via G mod PI. Okay. Now point is that we derive that sigma cannot act fixed point free on all the quotients. So we will pick up minimal I so that there is a fixed point tau in G mod PI such that sigma tau is tau. Again, by using the condition that comes in definition of uniform group being uniform, that there are isomorphisms from Pi minus 1 over Pi to Pi minus 2 over Pi, successive quotients. And so we can actually lift that fixed point to all the way to G mod P2. So P2 is nothing but PG, which is G mod PG. Which is the FP vector space. Okay. Now sigma is of order coprime to P, and this is the abelian because PG consists of G to the power P times commutator GG. So this is actually a abelian. This is a FP vector space, and sigma is of order coprime to P, and it has now action on this. So by Mashkin's theorem, one can deduce that there exists a cyclic P extension N unramified inside L. And from there, one can deduce that there is actually a degree P unramified extension all the way on F, okay, inside this N. But that contradicts the assumption that P does not divide the class number of F, okay. So I know that this is too much to grasp in one shot, but point is just to tell you that these are very simple group theoretic techniques that he has used, okay. So Boston's method, as we have seen, works when there are no non-trivial fixed points for the action of sigma on G L over K. Okay. Later on, Farshid Hajir and Christian Mayer attempted to extend Boston's strategy to the case of tamely ramified L over K. Okay, if you remember in Boston's case, we are looking at everywhere unramified extension. Okay, so for them, the challenge was to handle the fixed points introduced by the ramification, and as a consequence, the constraints posed on the arithmetic of L over K. So let me state the uniform version of Fontaine conjecture, the group-theoretic version. So suppose K is a number field and gamma is a uniform tropy group of dimension D strictly greater than 2, then there does not exist a finitely tamely ramified Galois extension L over K with Galois group this. Okay. So I will just quickly talk about this. Yes. So suppose, so I'm going to just discuss the statement of the result, and maybe I will hint upon the key idea what they have used. So we have this assumption that our extensions are finitely tamely ramified extensions. So this, let S be the finite set of places and T is outside S. Let T be a finite set such that S intersection T is empty. We denote by KTS the maximal tropy extension of K unramified outside S in which the places in T split completely. Okay, so all these are technical conditions. Then one can show that actually Galois group of KTS over K is the P-Zilla subgroup of T Ray class group of K mod S. Okay, so again, this is not, obvious. Now, K is a number field admitting non-trivial automorphism sigma of prime order L, okay, dividing P minus 1. I will denote by little k the fixed field of this action. Now, we will assume that the set S and T is described above are stable under this action of sigma. And then we can see that actually this Galois extension, this extension KTS over K is Galois and sigma acts on this Galois group of this extension. Okay. So what we have achieved here is that given such two sets S and T not in S, if K admits a non-trivial automorphism sigma of order L, then actually we can see that sigma also acts on GTS, and further this is the Galois extension. So let rho be a representation of this Galois group, PID representation of this Galois group. L be the subfield of this KTS, which is fixed by kernel of this. Okay. Now, because this is the fixed field of kernel, we know that the image of this is nothing but Galois group of L over K. So we say that this rho or this image is sigma uniform. Okay. If we have two conditions, if this image, which is GL over K, is uniform, it's a uniform subgroup, and if L over K is further Galois, okay, that is to say that action of sigma on GTS induces action on the image. Okay. So by using this definition, they have proved the following result. If K over K is a quadratic extension, and so they have proved many results providing evidence to Fontaine conjecture. I am just briefly mentioning here one of the results. So I'm looking at a quadratic extension, and suppose P does not divide class number of K. Now they are looking at a spatial uniform group. I already told you that these are the key examples of uniform group. So they have fixed gamma to be XL to 1 ZP, okay, two-dimensional. And suppose for all finite sets sigma of places of K with sigma and P is 1, there exist infinitely many disjoint finite sets S and T of primes of K. Okay, please pardon me. So suppose for all finite sets sigma of places of K, we have sigma and P to be 1. Then there exists infinitely many disjoint finite sets S and T of primes of K with these conditions are satisfied. Moreover, there is no continuous representation from GST which subjects onto gamma, where gamma is SL21ZP, which is our uniform property. Okay. So if you remember, the uniform version of Fontaine measure says that there cannot be such an extension whose image is a uniform group. Okay, and that's precisely what they have been trying to prove when you have gamma to be SL21ZP. So the key ingredient in this is actually, so they have defined a new notion which is called as action of sigma, which is fixed point mixing modulo fraternity. Okay, so that is to say that sigma acts non-trivially on the subgroup, which is the subgroup of fixed points of sigma modulo the fraternity subgroup of that. Okay. So let me not go into the details of this. I just wanted to highlight here that that their techniques heavily uses Boston's results, and they have generalized it to the TAME case. Okay, and again, their result doesn't use any automorphic method. So let me digress a little bit. Fontaine and Mazur asked in their original paper that whether we need the condition that S is a finite set, okay, and whether this actually automatically holds for every semi-simple n-dimensional periodic representation. So for the case of n equal to 2, Ravi Ramakrishna answered this question negatively. And in fact, under the generalized Riemann hypothesis, he has constructed irreducible two-dimensional representations which are ramified at infinitely many primes, but not at p. Okay, so yeah. So if you remember, when we had discussed the same Fontaine Mazur conjecture, there is this case that D is strictly greater than 2. For example, in literature, there has not been a specific account which discusses what happens if D is 1, what happens if D is 2, and so on, although all these things may be known to experts. So these things are also incorporated in our manuscript. Okay. Now, I'm quickly going to talk about, so this is the work in progress with Ramla Abdel-Latif, and this is based on Boston's result. So let me quickly recall what was Boston's result. So K was a normal extension of prime degree not equal to P of a number field where P does not divide the class number of F. Then there is no infinite everywhere unramified Galois group extension L of K such that L is Galois over F and the Galois group is uniform. Okay. Here is the example supplied by Buell, which is the example of a biquadratic extension. So in Boston's result, we are considering this is a cyclic extension. K over F is a cyclic extension. Now we are looking at a biquadratic extension, and we are taking P to be 3. Then actually by using Sage, one can check that 3, this prime 3 divides class number of K. Okay. So clearly hypothesis, so not just, of course it divides, 3 divides class number of Q. So of course 3 also divides the biquadratic extensions which are sitting inside K. Okay, Q root minus 104 and Q root 229. So as you can see, because 3 divides h of k and 3 divides the class number of respective quadratic extensions, hypothesis of Boston's result fails. Okay. So the question that one can ask here is, then will G have an infinite periodic analytic property quotient? Okay. So again, by using Sage, we have observed that the abelianization of G, which is G by phi G, is nothing but the 3-dimensional S3 vector space. And if you look at the dimension of H1, then it's 3, and dimension of H2 is predicted either to be 3 or 4. So here is the lemma. So our guess is that this G actually has to be isomorphic to SL to 1 ZT. And the way to check this is the following results. So suppose G is any infinite finitely generated propy group such that the Bockstein map H1 to H2 is an isomorphism. And further, if the cup product map is an isomorphism, then G is isomorphic to SL21ZP. So if we want to show that our G is actually isomorphic to this, then we need to check both these conditions. And if that is satisfied, then we know that that Boston's conditions that P does not divide H of F is actually a strict condition. So rather than going through the proof, let me explain it here itself. So we know that dimension of H1 is 3 and dimension of H2 can be 3 or 4. Okay, we have been successfully able to show that this Bockstein map is an injective map. If we could show that now a dimension of H2 is 3, then we are done. Okay, but looks like it's very hard to show directly by looking at this map. What we tried to do is to also look at this cup product map. And we have been also able to show that this cup product map is an injective map. But to derive that, I mean, our proof heavily relies on sage computation. And a corollary of proving that this cup product map is injective is that this group is a powerful group. Okay, so this is still a work in progress, and we are hoping to finish this soon. The earlier work with Ramla, Lara, Jacqueline, and Marine, which I was talking about. So we have just polished a preprint, and by the end of this month, that will be up on the archive. So I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Okay, let's thank Supriya. And so I see that there are some questions. So Mahesh and Shaunak. So Mahesh first.
No, I did not raise hand. I just clapped.
Okay, sorry. All right. Okay, so are there any questions? Okay, I will ask a question. So yeah, so when you show that this cup product map is injective, so what remains to be done to show that the target this thing is like three-dimensional yeah, three-dimensional?
Yeah, so here the cup product map, the dimension of this on the left hand side is again 3. So showing that this is injective is again not enough. So because we know that dimension of H2 can either be 3 or 4. Okay, so what we are right now trying is to use Herschel-Cell spectral sequence to actually see whether something can be, I mean, deduce more about the dimension of H2.
All right. Are there any other?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think Patrick Allen and Frank Caligari, they used the modularity lifting theorems to do this tame Fontaine Mazur conjecture.
Yeah.
So are there any analogs is there an analog of such approach for this theorems of Hajir and Mer that you quoted?
So actually, I mean, Hajir and Mer's approach is purely group-theoretic approach, and right. I haven't seen whether that can be actually directly implemented in the automorphic perspective.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, and in Hajir and Mer's paper is also pretty intense paper. I mean, although I'm saying that these are group-theoretic techniques, it's like 50-page paper, I mean, what I can tell you that in their techniques, they have not used automorphic any techniques.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I guess that, but I wasn't sure if, there might be some analog because I am not familiar with their work. So I thought I should just ask if there's an analog.
Yeah, not that I know
of. Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay, if not, let's thank Supriya again.
Thanks a lot.